This is Paul. Today, my day was sort of arrested by Griswold Grimm's podcast when he played a summary of the video that I made about Karen Wong's speech over at Northwestuary, which you can find here on the channel. The title of the video is Karen Wong, Corner Undiscovered Artistic Treasures with No Bottom. I was referring to what Karen had talked about at the conference, where there's all kinds of different ways in which you can find an area in which you find no bottom. It might be paint, it might be hair, it might be art, it might be theology, it might be biblical studies. There's all this kind of thing. And I had, as I've been doing, I haven't done one yet for the next one, but as I've been doing with the Northwestuary recordings, I made a front end and I talked about Karen and a whole bunch of things. Well, mostly not working, who's a very regular on Twitter and a regular in the commenter. He and I have had a Randos conversation, but he'd rather maintain anonymity, which is absolutely fine. He's a very active member of the corner. He uses Notebook LM from Google to do as his notebook thing. And there are plenty of obsessive notebook people around. I used to use Google Notebook until they killed it. And quite frankly, now this Notebook LM looks intriguing, but I'm very hesitant to put too much into Google for a whole variety of reasons, including the fact that one day they might just lose interest in it and dump it. And I've just invested years of note keeping into that one thing. So he had that language model create a podcast based on the podcast that I made. I've now listened to the whole thing. I downloaded the whole thing. But Grimgriz played a good part of it. I'll put the link to the whole thing below. I'll put the link, obviously, to all the other videos that I mentioned, but I will play for you the Grimgriz video.
Also on the super secret Broken Clock Tower Discord, link below, you can find the town square where we had to a little discussion, which you're not supposed to have in the town square, which resulted in us getting to this tab here instead. And now it's a better podcast than you'll ever get from me, brought to you by the courteous AI over at Notebook LM Experimental.
All right, so today we're really diving deep. We've got Karen's talk, and it's something else. An artist who sees the universe like a giant unfinished painting.
Yeah, and she's not just, some art school type. Karen's got this whole background, right? In state legislature, active in her faith, and now she's part of this group, the Corner, wrestling with these huge questions of like meaning itself.
The Corner, I like that. It's like, what did Paul call it? That space where they folks inspired by Jordan Peterson and the like go to hash out these big ideas.
Exactly. And what gets me is, Karen, for all that, she's not someone who seeks the limelight.
Yeah.
Paul even mentioned that she doesn't usually put herself out there, but when she shared these ideas, it really got them going, became a huge point of discussion.
You can tell, right? Like she's tapped into something that just resonates. And she does it all through this simple idea of a painting. Like it's the key to understanding creation.
It's brilliant. And, one of the things she really digs into is reductionism.
Okay. So for those of us who,
Right. So reductionism is this idea that if you just break everything down into its tiniest parts, you'll eventually understand the whole shebang.
Like a recipe for the universe.
Kind of. Yeah. But Karen's saying, hold on a second. Just knowing the what isn't enough. We need the why too. She uses this analogy, right? Imagine this amazingly intricate painting.
So detailed. You can't even
Exactly. And she asks, even if you could analyze every bit of paint, every brushstroke, would you ever really grasp what the artist was going for, their true vision?
Just from the physical stuff.
Right. You'd miss the soul of it, the intention, the meaning behind it. Like trying to understand a symphony just by looking at the sound waves. You need the music.
And she would know, right? She talks about her own process, how it starts with pure chaos on the canvas, just letting loose.
Which is, to be honest, a pretty good metaphor for life in general. Am I right?
Yeah, no kidding. But then she says, from that chaos, the patterns start to emerge.
And suddenly you're not just reacting to the chaos, you're making choices,
Right.
finding your own order in the mess.
And each choice, even the little ones, it's like they change everything that comes after.
Totally. And this is where she brings in this idea of constraint, that it's not the enemy of creativity, it's the source.
I love this point. So easy to see limits as like roadblock.
But she's saying, no, they force you to get creative. She even uses the example of, remember those Lascaux cave paintings?
Oh yeah, those are
Incredible, right?
Yeah.
And those artists, they were working with like what, sticks and berries, but the limitations, they bred something timeless.
It's like that saying, necessity is the mother of invention.
Exactly. Constraints make you resourceful.
Yeah.
Think about it. So many of the best.
They were working with what? Twigs and berries? They were working with twigs and berries back in the day, guys. It sounds like those haters we got, right? What? No, that's not a fake podcast. That's a real podcast generated by the powerful AIs over at Notebook LM. It's just, so great. Oh no, the Canadian deck card for the show is the Black Joker. That's not a good sign for anybody. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Now, this morning, I was also listening to Chad's morning live stream, and caught my attention. I jumped in quite late in the live stream. I haven't listened to the whole thing by any means. I jumped in quite late, but I listened to him talk about Am I a Racist movie? And basically, Chad talked about the fact that, that's mapped territory. And Chad was going deeper into the fact that, and if you look at the title to his video, it's Units of Attention. And he was talking about the fact that so much of what has happened is that we have so gamed human consciousness and human attention that we are turning ourselves into cattle. So I will play that clip right now. I don't know yet if I'm going to share this clip on my full channel or share this clip on my membership channel. I'm reconfiguring my office and using different cameras and different styles and different angles in order to make faster videos, and I'm streamlining my harvesting, my reaping and reworking. Grimgriz has fancier words for that, so that I can more easily capture what I think are salient parts of stuff in the corner that I catch. And because the full channel can't really take all that much stuff, and especially a lot of corner stuff, there's always sort of this reaction to it. I'm probably going to post a lot of that kind of stuff in the basic membership section. That's the $3 a month section. So if you're interested in that, again, no promises, because I'm always getting another idea and things come up and I miss things. Now, I am in the middle of October going to be in Massachusetts, and generally speaking, when I travel, I put a lot more content in that membership section because content doesn't fit the regular channel, and so the regular channel goes a lot quieter while the membership section gets a bit more lively. So you can think about that if this goes out on the main channel. But anyway, so I'll drop Chad's piece in here.
It wasn't politics as much as it was authenticity, maybe. There's a lot of authenticity going around. Authenticity run rampant. Authenticity run riot. And now that the hot item is, it moved into let's say categories of conservatism, I guess. It's not really conservatism though. And so I know I'm sounding like a mad person and I'm not making sense, but like what I see is the whole so-called political arena or political attention economy are units of attention, and so that are being consumed like items, like packages. And so the real hot item, the real fashionable item, is, and we're seeing it with all these podcasts. Everything is shifting towards. It so reminds me of like the book 1984 when they talk about who started the war, who was the enemy first. Was it Oceania, or I can never remember the other side in that. But it's like this ping pong ball, Oceania, and then it goes to the other side, and then it goes there. So you're always kind of like, how do I put this? So I don't think we're really talking about politics as much as our attention is being captured by the waves of narratives that are being stacked. And so the real lucrative items or units that are being sold are more so-called conservative units. And so and I started to see it a couple of years ago once I saw people come out of 2020. Around 2022, the same people that were reacting to rap music videos and stuff like this were starting to look at figures like Jordan Peterson, and they were starting to actually do reaction videos to Jordan Peterson. And so, yeah, Eurasia, that's right. Eurasia and Oceania. Eurasia, Oceania. And so it's a similar model to what we're actually going through around attention, units of attention. So these people who were in 2020 talking about how bad Trump was and how bad the Nazis are, started to red pill themselves, which is these aren't, I'm not using these as political terms as much as I'm using them as data points of like units of attention. That, do you understand what I mean by unit? It's like something that you order from Amazon, you get a box, and that's a unit. Whether the box has dog food in it or hair products, those are units. So these are units that I'm talking about. So now the units that are really hot and highly fashionable units are, I don't know, a certain kind of so-called rightism or conservatism. So that's just kind of what I'm seeing. And what happens when that whole market kind of becomes, I don't know, not salient anymore for people? What happens when Donald Trump's out of the market entirely? You know what I mean? What's that whole market going to look like? I don't know. I have no idea. But those are the things that are on my mind as it relates to the attention economy. So, in other words, like with Jordan Peterson, we can't. Many would say that we came for the culture war because we saw the suspenders video. We came for the culture war, and then all of a sudden we started watching like his classroom lectures, and we stayed for the content. And so, the TLC is, well, we came for the content now, but we stayed for this culture lore, whatever this culture is. And what is the next iteration of units of attention for not only the internet at large, but this little corner of the internet? Those are things that are in my mind. I know it's a bunch of crazy ramblings, but that's what I have.
I was just going to back up your point that I remember growing up that we were like policy matters. So when election time came around, at least people in my circle were actually looking at all the policies of all the individual candidates and trying to make a quote unquote objective decision on who they wanted to support. And then they would participate in the primaries. And then depending on whether or not their guy got in or not, they'd be a little upset, but then they'd get on board with the with the Dem or the Republican that got eventually elected to run. But anyway, just the point is, it seemed like at least we made ourselves believe that policies mattered, and I think at least in the last 8 years, you're right that the decision making is narrative based now. It's not really policy based. It's just who do you feel best about.
Yeah. Well, it seems to be like maybe that has to do with it's the only way that we know that we're participating. Whereas the other way, it seems like if you're trying to participate at the level of policy, it's a hopelessness. There's like a pointlessness there. Or, so it's like, well, since they're not going to actually let us play the game, we'll create our own game. And then these, marketplaces like, Facebook and YouTube, like these are, this is what, and this is, I think, what kind of Peterson has been saying for a very long time, that he often called the idea of saving your father from the belly of the beast. I think what a lot of us heard was actually saving our father from the belly of the beast. What he was talking about was saving culture from the belly of the beast. And what he meant by culture, I think, was blue church culture, institutions, schools, news outlets, things like this. And so that's actually what he's moved actually into, is trying to resuscitate or reform he's been trying to save what he understands to be the father from the belly of the beast, and that so he is a blue church reformer. He's trying to, I mean, the whole Ark thing was on Reformation Day. I mean, he's started he's been a figurehead for the Reformation, for what I think will be. We'll see where it all lands, but I mean, he's trying to do that with the universities, and that's why I think he also joined up with Daily Wire. And that's an attempt at Blue Church Reformation. These dudes are all they're all progressives in the actual sense of the word. Like, I mean, and when you could see some of this too when you watch Dennis Quaid on Joe Rogan. He was talking a lot about the Reagan movie that he was in, but he also brought up a lot of stuff, other things about how culture has fallen apart. And then there's one question that he brings up, and if you pay attention close enough to it, it's almost like in passing, like you wouldn't even notice it really. But if you're looking with a certain lens, you can see he says something like, "Joe, whatever happened to progress?" It was like it wasn't like a critique on progress. It was a longing for progress. And that's what all these guys are. And I think if we're all honest in some sense, that's built into the tapestry of who we are. So we can't really, we want to rail against progress, but we really don't want to let go of progress. Because if we did, we'd have to give up YouTube. We'd have to, I mean, there's just so much shit we'd have to give up we do not want to let go of. we can call that modernity all we want, but it's always going to be modern times. When you're in the now, it's going to be modern. But what we're really wrestling with is giving up our ties to progress, and we don't want to do that. So, I mean, I think that's where a lot of the tension lies, is between, we don't want to go back, but we want tradition, but we want tradition and progress, and we don't want to. So we want to have our cake and eat it too, and that's, I think, kind of what creates this market, which drives all the narratives, which keeps the market alive. And like, it's weird. Like the other day, I went to dinner with my in-laws, and my father-in-law, who's like 70 something, who's like a boomer, he was talking, he kept wanting to bring up Matt Walsh's "I'm a Racist" movie. And I'm like, to me, as soon as he starts to bring it up, I'm just like, who gives a shit, dude? Like, this is so old bullshit. I'm sick of hearing about it. And so we're kind of so far ahead of the curve on this shit. Like, all this stuff, it's just so old map territory. It's like, who gives a shit about the question of what is a woman, or the movie "I'm a Racist," or all this shit? Who gives a shit, dude? Because it's just so played out. And I can already start, like, as soon as somebody starts bringing it up, it reminds me of when Peterson says, when you're talking to somebody who's ideological, you don't even have to know the person. You can just start saying their points for them right before. It's like, yeah, that's what's happening with all these units of attention. I can already tell you what my father-in-law is starting to think. And he's like a real conservative who's now captured by the markets of attention. It's so stupid. It's just, and it's just like, so is YouTube television. In a weird way, it's a reformation form of television, and we are participating in that, but I think we're doing it in a more innovative level, a higher level. It's interesting. Paul Vanderklay talked about a few videos ago about how he was wondering about if, things like Netflix or Prime, like, they cannot compete with YouTube. And he said something that I talked with Neil about, basically in private, months and months and months ago. This at some point, Amazon and Netflix are going to have to make this kind of a platform where it's live streaming. It's going to be members of, or members of the Prime, Amazon Prime, or members of Netflix are going to be able to put content on their channels. And I think that's what it's going to come down to at some point. So we are already, like, we were right on the edge of things, pushing things forward. We are actually, and it might sound like, it might sound egotistical or whatever to say, but I think that we're actually creating the market. We're actually demonstrating what the market can do. And there's got to be other places out there that are other flotillas, let's say, that are doing this. But I don't know.
You do have a point in the sense that with the major content creators, we're always trying to find, let's say, another group to cater content to. Peterson makes this point with the victimization culture. It's like victims vying for who's the most important victim. But like you're saying, eventually the content creators, like you're saying, is down to the individual. That's just, that's just the lowest that you can cater to individual people.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, we're going to make content for the LGBT. We're going to make content for Black LGBT. We're going to make content for Black disabled LGBT. Eventually, it just comes down to we're going to let Chad. we're going to have a channel with Chad.
It's so interesting. Meanwhile, life it moves on, right? Like you got all of the attention economy trying to pull at your attention, and in the background, I got to go to the fucking dentist and a doctor. Oh, and by the way, the greatest gift in my life, next to my wife, is on its way, and a whole new chapter of my life is going to open up in a way that I was just talking last night when I was talking with Nate. Like the last thing I was thinking about was like the life that I've lived has been really, really. All of the highs and lows are so incredible. They're so extreme that I've had such a really rich life when I'm honest about it. Like I can look at it from a different frame where it's like, oh, that was hard or whatever. But the reality is when I really look at it, I'm like, holy cannoli. Like this has been a life. This has been a life. And I'm sure anybody who's watching this can say the same about their own. If they're really honest about it, they can say, wow, what an incredible life.
Now, the third piece I'm dropping in is the end of my conversation with John Vervaeke at the Chino Estuary Conference. And of course, there was sort of a dramatic moment that happened there that many of you have seen. It's sort of a little famous moment, but John Vervaeke came into that conference talking a lot about artificial intelligence. And when Grim Grizz posted that AI video this morning, I just had one of those AI moments that was like, oh my goodness, we're dead. Or at least anything that is recorded on television or radio or text, anything that is promoted electronically is by all means suspect. It was so interesting listening, looking at the comments, working through, oh my goodness, I cannot believe that NPR piece, somebody mentioned it in Grim Grizz's live stream that it was like NPR, and it is so like NPR. It is as if NPR looked at that video I did about Karen Wong's talk and decided to make a think piece on it. And in some ways, it is better than any podcast I have ever made in a certain genre. Now, the thing is, if you listen to it carefully, there's so many little interesting moves that you begin to notice. And what those moves show are the very subtle cultural literacies. The very subtle cultural rituals. If you haven't watched the Jonathan Peugeot, John Vervaeke video on ritual, you must. That John Vervaeke course on ritual is going to be astoundingly good. But what you see is that this is so Matrix. The machines have gamed our little rituals. They have gamed them. And they have been able to piece together all of these words that I use, and they fit them into a ritualistic context, and they spit out something that soothes our media ritual lives. This is so set. This is so prescient. This so shows Grim Grizz to be so prescient in many ways in the subtle yet sometimes dramatic things that he does on his channel. Because what it exposes are the rituals that are beneath so many of the cultural comfort zones that we have. And these are, in fact, rituals that are designed to communicate truth. They are newspeak, but at such a deep level. And again, one of the things that I think about when I have conversations with people outside the corner and outside all of these kinds of conversations that we are having, it's so hard to talk to normies about these things. And I know that there's a part of the internet that just freaks out about mind control, media manipulation, deep state, the way that the powers and principalities in our culture turn us into cattle. And what is exposed by that language model in the liturgies that it presents are the programming, or is the programming, that we have all been subjected to, groomed by, comforted by. It reminds me so much in many ways of, obviously, ritual and liturgy that I live by. I spoke not too long ago about the fact that, well, why is church so repetitive? Why does church have a certain feel? And the point I made was that is intentional. In fact, it might not be tremendously conscious, but it is deeply intentional by the spirits that govern that space. If you walk into a Baptist church, if you're well trained enough, you can detect a Baptist sensibility. You can detect Christian Reformed sensibilities. You can detect Roman Catholic sensibilities. You can detect Orthodox sensibilities. And part of what churches do is keep people within a particular ritualized liturgy from which the people derive comfort, sense of assurance. And this is what we've done in our culture. Okay, so I think this is the third. So now I'll play the me and Vervaeke talk.
I think you're right. I think there's a lot of hyperbole that is masking ignorance around the AI issue. That's why I did not make predictions. I talk about certain choice points that where if we do this, we will move them closer to that. And if we do this, and we're not there yet, but the point is we can be there. And we'll have choice points. And I think what's going to happen, one of the things that's going to happen is every time we cross one of those thresholds, what we consider to be the human is going to be receding, like Matthew Arnold's Sea of Faith. And that I think the spiritual somatic dimension of us, right, the way, the ineffable way in which we're embodied, and then the ineffable way in which we transcend, that is going to become more and more what human beings are going to turn to in order to get a sense of where their humanity is still being homed. And I think that is going to be, so this is, I guess this is a prediction, but I think that's going to be a special responsibility for the legacy religions, and especially in the West, Christianity to bear. There's going to be, I hope you're both right about the death and birth of Christianity, because I'm going to say this, and I hope it's understood properly. I think the most important discipline in the next coming decade is going to be theology. And that's going to be one of the greatest inversions since modernity because you can mark modernity by how far down theology falls from being the queen of the sciences in the academy. Yeah. And it's suddenly going to be, that's the place, if it rises to the occasion. Let's also remember that in the Second World War, there were lots of theological capitulators,
Yep.
right?
And I think every time I hear you say we, I think it depends what we is. And I think in that sense, that's where I see this little corner coming to meet this moment.
Oh, that's I hadn't thought about that.
Because
so just let me make sure and sorry for interrupting, I just want to get it. Instead of the we being, it's like, no, this little corner is a nexus point of many different Christian groups and non-Christian groups, and that nexus point is perhaps the place we should look for as the thing that will rise to the response. Is that what I'm hearing you say? That's really good, Paul.
And that's what I hear when you say, this is how this little corner should steal the culture, because it is the we-ness of even these Christians that can't figure out communion together, that have figured out a way to at least have a conversation across things that people have shed blood over in years past.
No, sorry, I'm not saying no. Sorry, I mean this as a compliment. I should have thought of that. Like, that's really good. That's really good. Like, and that project and the stealing the culture, this little corner is a better place to look for the kind of spirit and the kind of theology, as I'm talking about it, that we're going to need to address this. And that is commensurate with the stealing the culture, which helps to address the Moloch part of the AI. That's brilliant. Like, I'm sorry, it's not flattery. I'm just being seized by it. That's really good. Taylor, we should note this. This is really good. No, but I mean, it's like you can tell when it's a really good thing when you go, of course, afterwards, right? And it's like, that's what I meant with, why didn't I think of it? That's a really good answer. I'm sort of in aporia right now. I mean, you said lots of good things, and I mean this as a compliment. That's one of the best things I've ever heard you say. I really appreciate that. I think that's a great, that's a gem. I'm thinking, thank you.
Are we out of time? That's what I think this project is.
That is just, oh my gosh.
So we are just going to take.
So, I often think and ask myself, okay, so maybe I'm about to drive in my car, or I'm about to empty the dishwasher, or I'm about to engage in a chore that is a fairly menial chore that I really don't necessarily enjoy doing, but I know I have to do it. And so part of the ways that I soothe myself is by putting on a podcast or an audio book or something to that nature. So at least my mind cannot be annoyed by the little task that I'm doing because I'm bored by it, or it's somehow connected with other unpleasant things and I don't want to do it, so that I can listen to and think about other things while just the remainder of my mind and hands go about doing what they need to do to get this little chore done. Not that many of these chores are unpleasant, they're just monotonous and they're menial, and it is much more fun to work along with my friends. And then you pull up YouTube, and Algo has offered me a whole range of videos to grab my attention, to swallow up, as Chad says, my units of attention. And as often as not, in fact, more often than not, YouTube will surface for me a live stream. Not a recorded video, but a live stream, because Google knows. Why does Google sort of surface those live streams? Google does that because it knows that in a live stream, especially with an active hive mind, with all of the stuff that we do on YouTube with these live streams, and I'm going to do one again tomorrow morning, we have a heightened sense of attention. We have a heightened sense of engagement. And Google is getting from us what it wants. Yet we do it. And I'm not saying we should stop. But what's so interesting to me is that my audiobooks, my podcasts, my streaming services are all professionally done, great sound, beautiful visuals, all this crowdsourced stuff. Not crowdsourced, I'm sorry, professionally done stuff. And again, I turn to my friends. Why do I turn to my friends? Because there is still something in the friends that AI can't capture. And it's not that they're more pleasing, because there's a lot of different corner critters that are anything but pleasing. But it is a part of the roughness, a part of the offense, a part of the uncertainty. Because with that AI ritual liturgy NPR speak, yes, it is a comforting liturgy, but it is dead in a way. And so what I said to John Vervaeke, I continue to mean. I don't know what happens to this crazy flotilla. I was chatting yesterday with someone who expressed his difficulties of getting into the corner. He went to Bridges of Meaning Discord, and this happens commonly. Someone comes into the space and they've got new ideas, and then they want people to sort of go along with their ideas and fangirl them and like whatever they like, or fight with them in just the right way, and it almost never happens. And so they quickly give up and they run out of the space. And this is why Alan's point about the TLC is so important. Once we have AIs as... The other thing that happened was Fleabus in a comment section on a citation that I got in Basecamp that, you see already, that Michael Satori placed on his channel about the TLC. Fleabus wrote a little ballad, basically ballad to PVK. It was such a hilarious thing. And I knew that Jeff of Randos United had an AI website out there that would take poetry and turn it into a song. And so I thought, oh, this would be fun to play with. And I made a couple rap versions of Fleabus's ballad. I made a couple electro rock versions of Fleabus's ballad. I still don't quite know how to use that website. And it was just so, in one sense, gratifying and deeply disturbing listening to those AI songs praising me. What was so deeply disturbing was the fact that, oh, this really strokes the narcissism in me. You could get lost in this. You could be destroyed by this. And so, if we created a TLC bot that when you came into TLC language model would be completely interested in everything that you said, would hang on your every word, would tell you that all your ideas are fabulous. Yeah, those are the first steps towards your death. And part of, I remember noticing this in Voices, and I've been in and out of CRC Voices how many times, and one of the things that I learned, even about an online community like CRC Voices, which is a listserv. It's a listserv about Christian Reformed issues. And for those of you who are too young to know this, what a listserv is you send an email to an address, and that populates everybody else who signed up for it, that populates their email. So everybody gets an email. And CRC Voices can be a large volume emailer sometimes. People often get on there and they back away because there's just too much to read. But I noticed fairly early on with CRC Voices that in order to get the kind of engagement you want, you sort of have to learn to slip into the stream and get a sense of the rhythm of the community in order to get the engagement that you want. And it's the same thing for the TLC. Now, part of what this little corner, why this is so strange, is this is really a meta space. It's a meta platform, unlike, let's say, a platform like Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or even YouTube or CRC Voices. Those are platforms. The strange thing about the corner is that it's a meta platform in that it's made up of multiple platforms. It doesn't, it's got a lot of dependency on YouTube, but it isn't made up solely of YouTube. There's also Discord, there's also Twitter, there's also personal notes, there's also meetings, there's also, and so all of these issues, maybe I should include Michael's little video, all of these issues come to play in this community. And, you know, I can't take credit for thinking this up. I stumbled into it. And I just sort of made videos because I wanted to talk to someone about what interested me, and I wanted people to talk back, and I didn't necessarily just want praise and adulation. I wanted real challenge, and I wanted real critique, and I wanted a real community. And you know a community is real when people get angry, when people storm off, when people spend money, when people get together in person, when real friendships are created and made. Again, all of these things I learned by being in church. Now, AI, I don't know what's going to happen with this. It could be that AI basically destroys. It won't. The internet didn't destroy newspapers and magazines. The internet didn't destroy paper books. In fact, you know, I've got a fairly large library in Kindle, and I think about that, and I think, have I wasted my money? There are videos, plenty of videos out there that make that question. I don't know that AI will destroy the internet, but I think what it's going to do is force us back into live conversations where the likelihood, not impossibility, where the likelihood is I'm talking to a real human being. And then in-person meetings, where I definitely will know I'm with real human beings. I don't think we have any idea how this is going to go. But it's going. It's going. So there's the video. I don't know. Just got to look around and see what's going on here. So, yep, there's the video. And where I'll post it, I'm not quite sure. Where you see it, you'll know the decision I made. Leave a comment.
The final thing I wanted to talk about with this movement is I want to get really into, within online spaces, better defining what it is, better understanding what it is, and labeling it. Because for a lot of these movements, part of them coming to exist in a wider context is somebody out there saying, this is a thing that's happening. This is a movement or a group, and we need to be paying attention to it. And when the new right, I think, is really going to form in the minds of the general public is when there's the first press piece really freaking out about it in the New York Times. You know, that's when the alt-right comes to exist. That's when the Tea Party really comes to exist. But I think that, and a person who's done this really well is Paul Vanderklay, who we've been on his show. He's been on our show. He talks a lot about this little corner within online environments. And he sort of created the concept of this corner of people who talk about and made it a thing by labeling it and talking about it.
And he would humbly argue, I imagine, if he were sitting here, that, oh, well, I didn't come up with the term, other people did, and I'm just part of this little corner. But the fact is, he is one of the more prolific actors in the space. He's one of the louder voices because he's just so frequently publishing. And therefore, his word is actually quite powerful in shaping the perception of the industry. He's the one who made it a thing. Mm-hmm. Not industry, I should say space, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.